Klein's working, and he's here right now. Klein.
I was just wondering if the executive director.
No. They're just trying to record you, so it's kind of directed towards.
We could put that in as a performance measure if you'd like, sir.
I think you're probably have to get as high a mark on those as some of the other things.
We're working on a new conference room for the South, so that will hopefully help everybody out, so that we have a place to go that is our own. Ready to start?
Yeah.
John,
All right.
you really know how sensitive that is.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order this afternoon. I want to welcome everyone here. We're broadcasting from the new offices of the Silver State Health Insurance Exchange here in Carson City, and we will have our own ability to teleconference between here and Las Vegas on a go-forward basis. We're connecting with the other board members down in Las Vegas at the College of Southern Nevada at the Charleston campus. So again, I want to welcome everyone to our new offices and our new teleconferencing. And with that, I'm going to ask John to take the roll call and see if there are any announcements.
Ms. Johnstone?
She asked me to call her present. She's on the phone,
yeah.
and she's minutes from being here.
Ms. Lewis? Dr. Klein?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Kerr?
Here.
Dr. Ford?
Yes.
Director Wilden? Commissioner Kipper?
Here, here.
Vice Chair Atkins?
Here.
And Chair Campbell?
Present.
We have a quorum. So a couple of announcements. So first of all, we're on a new system, and we appreciate everybody's patience as we work through some of the technical issues. This system really picks up everything that goes on in the room, so if you're whispering, they could probably hear it better than we can hear it up here, so just be aware of that. Also, once Ms. Johnstone arrives, we're going to go on to a broadcast only for the phone so that we don't get interrupted in the middle of the conversations. While we are on public comment, we'll take it out of broadcast only so that anybody on the phone can communicate with us. And I think that covers everything.
All right.
Oh, one more thing. I'm sorry. So we may not have we probably won't have the conference room in Southern Nevada set up for the next meeting. It might be several meetings. We haven't signed the lease yet. We need to get that approved. We need to do build out probably. So build out, then lease, build out, move in, and hook up all the IT. So it's going to be a few months before we can get that done. But it's coming.
All right. Thank you. Then I'm going to move to agenda item number 2 and open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment here in Carson City? All right. How about public comment in Las Vegas?
None here.
All right. Is there any public comment on the phone? All right. With that, then I'm going to ask Athena to put us on broadcast only, which means if people are wanting to put things on hold and that, we won't be disturbed by it. When
All
we do,
participants are now in listen-only mode.
when we will have public comment at the end of the meeting, we will go off of broadcast only at that point in time. If during the agenda there's an item that we decide to open up for public comment, we will go live at that point too. So anytime that we have public comment in between the normal agenda item number 2 and agenda item number 14, we'll take it off of broadcast only. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 3, which is the approval of the minutes for February 14th and February 27th. Do we have any board members that wish to make edits or changes to those minutes?
You might want to change the, I'm sorry, item number 2 regarding the type of comment.
Public comment?
Yeah, it doesn't say public.
We will fix that.
A typo. A
We will
correction
fix
is a
it.
typo.
We will fix a typo on the top of page 2 on the February 14th meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Kerr.
You're welcome.
Are there any other edits? Any other? All right, if there are none, do we have a motion to accept the minutes as amended for February 14th?
So moved, Lynn.
All right, is there a second?
Second, Marie Kerr.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, motion passes. And then do we have a motion for the minutes for February 27th? And I do not believe I heard any amendments or edits to those minutes.
February 27th suffers from the same defect.
Okay?
Not as funny the second time.
All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the 27th with the amendments that have been notated?
Motion to approve, Marie Kerr.
Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Justin Johnston.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. And for the record, let's note that Ms. Johnstone has come into the Charleston facility. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is the Executive Director's Report.
For the record, John Hager, Executive Director. The Executive Director's Report follows much of the same format from previous sessions, from previous meetings. On page 2, we see the 2013 legislative session update. We've had 4 presentations at this point, with 1 additional presentation tentatively scheduled for the end of March. Usually these presentations are, actually I think always, these presentations are always broadcast online, so you're welcome to watch the presentation on March 27th if that is in fact when that ends up being scheduled for. That is actually our budget hearing, which I was surprised is as late as it is, but apparently they're not too concerned with our budget, so that would be great. Status, well, we hope they're not too concerned with our budget. I suppose I shouldn't make any assumptions. The status of the exchange implementation, there's been a flurry of federal regulatory activity. So much has been difficult to keep up with over the last couple of months. So you can see the regulations listed on pages 2 through 4. We did submit comments for the regulation regarding the appeals process. Most of those, you can find those comments on our website or clicking that link. But basically, the gist of the comments was that we would like as much flexibility as they could possibly provide to us. There are 5 sets of regulations for which comments are due between March 18th through June 3rd, so we're working through those. The March 18th one is the first one. The biggest concern we have with that one is the eligibility for exemptions. It makes sense that the exchange, I'm going to go into a little more detail on this one, it makes sense that the exchange manage exemptions for affordability because the affordability is measured off of the subsidy and the least expensive bronze plan. And we are the only ones that have access to that information truly. For each individual person, we know what is the cheapest bronze plan for that individual, and it could be different depending on their age, depending on their location, smoking status, etc. So it makes sense that we do that piece. But there are also a list of, I think, 4 additional exemptions that we are responsible for as well. And they go religious exemptions and some other ones. And I can't remember off the top of my head what they are, but the concern that we have is the exemption is for being exempted from the tax penalty, an IRS function. We're concerned that we are going to be providing individuals religious exemption certificates to file with their taxes to show that they are not, that the tax penalty is not applicable. So we're very concerned with that. Now the problem is that the Affordable Care Act has basically 2 paragraphs, in I think it's section 1311, that talks about managing exemptions. One is affordability, which makes sense. The second one says, and anything else that we're required to manage. And then it references several other places. I think the reason that CMS has indicated that we have to manage those exemptions is because in some way or fashion those exemptions are listed in the Affordable Care Act itself, and so their hands are tied because of the legal requirement that we manage those. So this is probably something we will express our concerns about this in our comments, but this may not be something that they can change. It might require congressional action to make that change. So it's concerning that we as a healthcare enrollment entity, we understand that we're managing the advanced community tax credit process, the subsidy process, but to go beyond that tax process and also manage exemptions for tax penalties that are really between the individual and the IRS is very concerning. And it just so happens that we actually have, the document says information only. This was for possible action on the agenda. I don't know if the board would like to take a position on that, but that is a major concern. The other regulations that we're moving through, the next one is due April 1st, and that's regarding establishment of exchanges, qualified health plans, small business options program. And when we submit those comments, they will mostly be about flexibility and a few operational concerns, but we're working through those items. There were also 4 final rules that were published between February 25th and March 11th. We are working through a few of them. The Office of Personnel Management, which is actually the last one, established its rules on the multi-state plans that took into account some of our comments, but not all of our comments that we had. So there are some concerns about the level playing field between the multi-state plans and the qualified health plans that we're working through, and we're going to work on trying to get memorandums of understanding with CMS and with the OPM to make sure that those plans are established properly in the state of Nevada. Excuse me. The other ones regarding actuarial value and accreditation, essential health benefits, those were more focused on functions that the Division of Insurance works through. And their comments were submitted with the NAIC, I believe, or the NAIC submitted comments on the states, plural, all the states' behalves. And then health insurance market rules, rate review, again, that's same thing, Division of Insurance and NAIC. And then finally, the HHS Notice of Benefit and Payment Parameters was also published. The technical implementation, if you looked at the previous quick look, the diagram, compared it to this time, not a whole lot has changed. The 2 items that were significantly behind are still behind. We've got a discussion today about merging the Medicaid and the exchange call centers that we'll go through. Once that decision is made at DHHS, then we'll be able to catch up on both of those items significantly. There's 3 other milestones that are slightly behind, but should not create any significant operational impact. Carrier onboarding, we've had so far 2 of 9 carrier onboarding meetings. The first meetings were on February 27th and March 13th. That was yesterday, I guess. It seems like a week ago. And the last one ends currently on June 5th, although we're looking at possibly compressing that schedule. We've had pretty good participation from 6 carriers so far. We had 6 carriers participate in the first one. I believe we had 9 carriers participate in the last one. Some of them were dental carriers. So we'll see what kind of final participation we end up getting. All of the information is posted on our website. The meetings will also be available on our YouTube channel as well.
You know, before you go to the next item, John, why don't you explain to people what that carrier onboarding is, what that process entails?
Sure. So the carrier onboarding process, basically it provides us a way to communicate with the carriers regarding the requirements of the exchange, all of the different technical requirements to get our plans on the exchange website. It started off with the general policies. This last time we talked about some of the plan certification type policies. Going forward, the next 2 meetings are about enrollment, eligibility. They need to make sure they understand the eligibility rules. So there'll be an individual meeting and a shop meeting. There's going to be program fulfillment, which includes printing out temporary ID cards, having the carriers print out final ID cards and the plan documents. All of the things that you would need to make sure that enrollment is efficient and successful from start to finish. So it's all the requirements that we have. There's going to be one on billing and how the billing functions will work, how the files are transmitted that indicate an enrollment or a payment at the exchange and then to the carrier, appeals processes, how an appeal works on our side because they need to understand the protections that we put in place for enrollment so that we're not just wide open to anybody. I mean, we are wide open. Anybody can enroll, but there are rules to enrollment to make sure that the market's protected and the premiums don't skyrocket because of a lack of following the rules. So there's also an appeals function where the carrier can appeal an enrollment. For instance, if a person uses tobacco but says on their application that they don't use tobacco and the carrier has evidence to indicate that they do use tobacco, then there will be an appeals function back to us to be able to adjust that enrollment as appropriate. So a lot of different pieces that need to be communicated with the carriers, and we're working through that entire process, both as groups and when carriers ask us individually. We'll have meetings with the carriers individually when they come to us. But the meetings that are in the group setting, they can all be found on our carrier onboarding page. So if you go to exchange.nv.gov, if you go to resources and then carrier onboarding, all the information that we're providing the carriers is there as well. The navigators and enrollment assisters, we thought it was appropriate to add this paragraph now that we're really moving forward. The policy decisions on the plan itself were made by the board. I believe it was December. The RFA, the draft request for application, or the concept, was approved in February. The request for application for grants for navigators and enrollment assisters was published by the exchange on March 1st. We had newspaper ads in Reno, Las Vegas, and Elko to advertise that. Plus, we sent out a notice to probably everybody in this room and in Las Vegas. Basically, our meeting notification list and anybody that signed up for Navigator, the Navigator notification list as well. In addition, we had several entities that passed the information on to their sub-entities or partners. So a lot of communication. We had pretty good participation at the 2 meetings. There was a meeting on Monday and a meeting yesterday that was required to be able to submit an application. And it went through the application process, the requirements, the training for the navigators and enrollment assisters, a very high-level summary of the training for the navigators and assisters. We're still working on the meat of those requirements, but with the Division of Insurance. But basically, you had to be at one of those meetings to be able to submit an application for that grant. So those were pretty successful. I think we probably had over 100 people attended those meetings. So we'll see what we get out of that. Certainly, if we have 100 different grant applications, that will be quite challenging for us to manage, and we will work through that process. It might be that we have somebody that will be a manager of the navigator entities for us. So we're working through the process. We'll see what we get. Once we get those applicants, which I believe are due April 4th, the staff will look at the applications to ensure that they are complete, and then once they've looked at them, they've made notes, then they're going to give it to the grant selection committee, and we'll make those selections on May 2nd, and then bring those selections to the board at the May board meeting. Marketing and advertising is full steam ahead as well. We're keeping these guys over here to our right, Mr. Haycock and Mr. Bowden, pretty busy here with these various items. The marketing advertising vendor, as you all know, has been selected, contracted, has been working through processes for branding the exchange, and we've got a discussion today and a printout of the KPS3 name selection process should have been provided to the board members in the South, and we actually should have them here. Ms. Cox, do we have copies of the KPS3 presentation? Could you please make copies for those of us here in the North? And then once that's done, at the next meeting, we'll talk about logos, taglines, color palettes, etc. We will, at that point, have a fully branded exchange ready to go. We are working on a survey right now to determine where our advertising should be placed and the concepts of that advertising. We're using secondary research, and there'll be some primary research that we conduct over the next several weeks. We'll be moving into phase 1 in July for our actual placement of that advertising, and you'll start hearing informational advertisements. What is the exchange, or whatever we're called at that point, as far as our brand name is. What is insurance? Why do you need to buy insurance? Stuff like that. So working through all of those items. So marketing advertising is certainly very busy. Upcoming events and deadlines. You can see that we've expanded this fairly significantly from the last time. The first several lines are all about the Navigator and enrollment assisters and those grant applications. The last day for carriers to submit plans for certification is QHPs is currently June 7th. We have set a date for our Northern Nevada Exchange Summit at the Sparks Nugget on June 11th. And then the Southern Nevada Exchange Summit, we think, will be on June 14th, the day after the June 13th board meeting. So we encourage everybody to attend, including the board members, for the appropriate summit. Or perhaps we have a meeting that is all down south at that point, and have all the board members down the south. Of course, we have to make sure that we don't talk too much business and make decisions with a quorum outside of a public meeting, so we'll have to be careful about that. But we're really excited about those. We're working on the agenda. We're trying to make sure that those groups that can get continuing education will be able to get it at that meeting. So, for instance, brokers, perhaps providers. We'll work with the various entities, accrediting entities, to ensure that we can provide continuing education as appropriate. We expect that there will be not only preliminary group sessions, but there will also be breakout sessions for the various groups. So whether that's navigators and enrollment assisters, CACs, providers, brokers and agents, carriers, any other stakeholder, and other groups. We're working through all those agenda items, but for now, please mark your calendars for June 11th and June 14th. So the advisory committees, the work of the advisory committees is substantially complete. We're working on a couple more things. The Plan Certification and Management Committee will be discussing network adequacy at its March 25th meeting, and hopefully we'll be able to bring a decision back to the April 11th board meetings to have a decision or a recommendation for network adequacy. We're working with the commissioner on the appropriate standards for that. If it doesn't happen, if it can't get all done by then, we can get it done. We should be able to certainly get it done by May. The Consumer Assistance Committee, the work for the consumer assistance is complete pending publication of the final rules regarding appeals. So we originally thought without having the current preliminary regulations on appeals, we didn't know what they would have, and so we thought we would have to create regulations at the state level to do appeals. We feel that the regulations that are provided in the preliminary rules is sufficient, but we don't know what the final rules are, so we're not going to say that we're completely done with this, and we may still need to provide some regulations at the state level to make this work. So we're still working through that, and whether or not those regulations come to the board directly or they come to the Consumer Assistance Committee, we have to work that out, and that will depend on how complicated those regulations are. One other thing that we'll have to consider, we're trying to get data on vision plans to be able to set a vision fee. We don't have the statutory authority until the law is changed to be able to go through a regulatory process to set a vision fee, but we can do a preliminary setting of that fee. So we would like to, at the next meeting, come back hopefully with a recommended fee for vision plans to be offered on the exchange, and kind of a thought process on how we're going to go forward with it to change the regulations and get that communicated officially. But that will help the vision carriers. If it is finally determined that we can in fact offer vision plans on the exchange, that will help the vision carriers start planning for that. The board calendar is on page 7, going through page 9. It's as detailed as we can make it through January of 2015, so basically 2 years. We have a couple of items on there that we've put as proposed. That will depend on our decisions for the review of the performance of the executive director, which is in items 9 and 10, and the board self-assessment. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hager. Going back to one of the items that we were concerned about, it's on page 3 of 9, dealing with the exemptions. Now, I'm going to ask Mr. Belcourt something on this. The agenda says that agenda item number 4 is for possible action, but on the lead page on it says for information only. So I think we should be conservative on this, or?
Yeah, if the director's report is for possible action and there's no action specified in the agenda, you're limited to accepting the report. You can't take any action on the contents. So what we would need to do for future agendas is have that specifically in the agenda, what action we need, what item needed to be have action on it. And there's nothing really spelled out here as to action to do this or that. For example, to recommend comment on regulations.
Because the deadline for Mr. Hager and staff to make comment is March 18th, which is prior to any next meeting, would it be appropriate for John to review comments with, say, myself and Vice Chair Atkins before he sends that off? Or?
As far, I think I believe so. Let me, since Keith usually advises on these issues, I'd be happy to take a look at it and discuss it with John, and he can get back to you. But it obviously just can't be a decision of the board to do A or B. It's got to be John, and on consultation with you probably would be okay. But let me get back to you, John, on that if I can.
So my view of the comments on regulations generally is it's an administrative function. We are commenting on the regulations themselves, and I think that's administrative. If the board would like to potentially take action to make a recommendation to our congressional delegation to say that this needs to be fixed, that I would not assume to do that. I think that would be a board action that we could take at a future time.
I thought during your comments today you said you wanted some comments from the board members on this issue because you were troubled with it. So do you want to put it off to another meeting, or?
I think that to be safe, as Mr. Belcourt indicated, that we should put off to another meeting and actually agendize it, and the board can consider whether or not it wants to make a recommendation perhaps to our congressional delegation to say this needs to be changed, this is not appropriate for the state to do, or not. That I think that the staff can make comments on these regulations. We've done it so far for a few of them, and maybe overstepped my bounds, but I do think it's an administrative function for the comments on the regulations.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Does anyone have? Ms. Atkins?
I just want
to. 2 things. Ms. Lewis has arrived.
Thank you.
And I also have a question, I guess, on the comments, and I was just wondering how the comments were put together for appeals. I don't know that I necessarily agree all of that's administrative. I think we're presenting policy opinions about, de novo review and not de novo review, and so I'm wondering how the comments were put together for appeals.
So generally, in the past, we have asked our consultants to put together their comments on the appeals, and then once they have done that, then staff updates the appeals based on some of the operational considerations. What we realized on a few of the recent ones is that we failed to provide comments that we really needed Xerox and their team in on. So going forward, we've asked them to provide comments for the operational functions that are difficult to implement regarding the various regulations.
Madam Chair, well, who is putting these together? Yourself and someone else, or?
So the consultants have been putting them together, have given us an initial draft, and then staff has been making fairly significant changes then to add the things that we feel are appropriate, and I have been the one that has submitted them with it's been with my signature.
So I'm not sure how to address it, and I'm not even sure, there's some of these things in here that I think I would need some time to think about, but I do think some of these are policy comments and not administrative. I think when we're suggesting, just an example as I'm looking at this, page 6, to reduce any unnecessary appeals burden and cost of legal process, we recommend that appeals entities should review the appeal de novo unless the appeal entity determines that de novo hearing is not required. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. So again, I'm not sure really what to do necessarily, and that it might be very burdensome to prepare all of the comments and then submit them to the board, but I also am concerned that policy statements are being sent on behalf of the board that the board doesn't know anything about.
All right, let us take those comments, and since this isn't an action item, let me discuss some options with John and bring it back at the next meeting. I think we all need to realize also, in conjunction with this, that some of his deadlines do not coordinate well with our board meetings. So let's see what we can work out so that if policy decisions are being suggested, that the board is intimately involved in that process. Does that sound reasonable, Ms. Kerr? I'm sorry, Ms. Atkins.
Sure.
Okay, and then Dr. Klein, did you have a comment or question? I'm sorry, I could not hear you.
Ms. Lewis was here as well.
Oh, okay, thank you. Are there any other comments from board members with respect to the executive director's report? All right, there being none, we'll move on to agenda item number 5. Deals with the legislative bills.
For the record, John Hager, the legislative update, the information that you see on pages 1 through 3 have not changed. So we really have nothing additional to discuss on the items that are here. However, I would like to point to 2 items that we can't take any action on, probably can't really discuss today, but we'll be able to discuss it at the meeting in 2 or 3 weeks. 2 additional bills have been submitted. AB 220, Assembly Bill 220, which deals with credit card fees. It basically says that a state agency can no longer charge credit card fees, or it might be statewide, but certainly it applies to us that if we had credit cards, if we utilized credit cards, we could not charge a convenience fee or any type of fee for that one. So the concern is that if we allow individuals to pay their bill with a credit card, there's a 1.65, 1.75% merchant fee that's attached to that. If the exchange budget, that $20 million a year, or whatever that is based on just the exchange fees, which is only $5 to $8 or $9 per member per month, but the credit card fee would be based on the entire premium of, say, $300 a month. So we think that based on our enrollment and premiums, that there will be about $500 million in premiums per year. And so if you had a say a 2% credit card fee on that, that's $10 million a year. Assuming that only a quarter of them actually use the credit card, you're still looking at a 10 to 15% increase in our overall budget. So that one is concerning, and that would have to be made up by raising our fees to the entire population. The idea of charging the credit card convenience fee was that it would only apply to those that use it, so it would create an incentive for them to use a less expensive method. The other item is Senate Bill 418, which was vetoed in the 2011 session. All the vetoed bills are brought back to the legislature. My understanding is that the bills have been tabled and no further action was going to be taken on them, but they are on the list, so we do have that. And it basically creates a legislative subcommittee of the, I think it's of the interim health committee or something. I can't remember exactly what the words are, but basically that subcommittee of the legislature would oversee the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. So you would, I would imagine that would create substantial oversight over the exchange. Again, we can't really discuss those much because they're not agendized because they came out this week, but we'll make sure that they're on the agenda for the next board meeting.
And this is that telephonic board meeting that you're
Correct.
talking, and that is, do you have the date on that? I think it's the 27th.
That one is on March 27th at 4
March.
p.m.
Okay. So we'll have Mr. Hager bring more information on that and get it properly noticed so we can discuss that. So do we have any questions for Mr. Hager on the legislative review? If not, we'll move on to item number 6, which is the development of a brand name for the exchange.
The exchange has been moving forward, staff has worked.
Identify yourself.
Oh, for the record, this is CJ Bowden. It's strange not having the mic in front of us now at a board meeting. But the exchange has been working, staff has been working very hard with KPS3 to work with the public and find a correct public-facing name for the exchange and to identify options. We've worked together with a advisory group as well that was comprised of board members and advisory group members to hash out different name suggestions and put together a presentation that KPS3 will present now to the board for a public-facing name choice for the exchange. And with that, I'd like to introduce.
So I got one comment to interject there. So this agenda item was posted on our website this afternoon, so it's available if anybody wants to look at it. It's online at the board meeting webpage, agenda item number 6.
And with that, I would like to introduce Stephanie Cruz with KPS3 to start the presentation.
Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie Cruz. I'm president of KPS3. And
Stephanie, I'm going to ask you to get a little bit closer to the microphone because you kind of fade in and out a little bit.
okay, how about that? Is that better? Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, it's fine. Why don't you, if you step forward just a little bit, we can see you. Right now, you're,
That's good.
all right, perfect.
Okay. I am Stephanie Cruz. I'm with KPS3, and today we were going to share a presentation with Rob Denke, who is our Vice President of Creative Services, who is in Carson City. But because of the tenuous audio, I think I'm just going to handle it all here. So if those in Carson City have any issues with hearing me, please speak up so that I can stop or do something different or aim my voice at, or throw my voice someplace else, whatever we want to do. So today is an exciting day. We have the potential for 4 options for names for the board's consideration today. This is after 2 months of a lot of research and a lot of work by the exchange staff, the working committee, and KPS 3, and a lot of people we've engaged in research. So today is an exciting day for us. Hopefully we'll be able to find a name and you'll understand our rationale. I apologize in advance because some of this you heard last month. We did some of the presentation for you, but because this is going to be on the website, we wanted to have a very clear and detailed process determination and discussion so that people knew went through in order to come up with 4 recommendations that we're making today. So the task, as CJ said, is to develop a public-facing name for the insurance exchange and ensure that all options had a complimentary Spanish translation and that they all had an available website URL. So the process that we undertook, in order to come up with a very long initial list for us to consider and for us to test and research, we first looked at what other states were calling theirs. Not that their research is akin to ours, or that they're not Nevada, and what might work in California is not necessarily something that we want to do in Nevada. But you'll see on the next page some of the names used in some of the other states. There were a lot of names that we ended up taking to focus groups to test, to see how they went with our particular population. So there's a list of names and there are corresponding URLs that you see. And then we also reviewed a lot of states' existing research, secondary research, as well as research from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, who had done a lot of research with our target population to determine really their preferences, their thought processes, their understanding of how they work and how they prefer to receive information. So this was something I presented in detail last board meeting, so I'm not going to bore you again with all of this. But basically, they liked words that were very simple, easy to understand. They preferred to have the state name inside the name of the exchange. And they also felt that some reference to health insurance was going to be important, whether it's in the name itself or in a tagline or in a logo, something very easy for them to understand that it was an insurance product. They did not like or understand the word exchange. It was confusing to them. They liked the concept of it once it was explained to them, but they didn't get the term exchange. So moving on to the next page, the process undertaken, step 2, we developed a list of potential names through input from the exchange staff. We also wanted to test the Silver State Health Insurance Exchange as a name option, so we did take that one to focus groups. And we basically developed a long list to vet against our research, including Spanish versions of all of the names, because we know it's going to have to translate well into Spanish with minor nuances. We also determined if there was any other organizations in the state that already existed that had those names, and that was the case in some cases, and eliminated those. And then determine the availability of website URLs in both English and Spanish. If it didn't have a URL that could be associated with a name, we knew it was not going to be a good option for us to test. So then we took this long list and we vetted that list with the exchange staff and also our working group. The working group provided valuable input, especially with respect to Spanish names and meanings. So in the translation, we may have had a literal translation, but the nuance did not portray what we wanted to portray very well. We added the word "my" to some of the names because that was, in our research, it indicated that that resonated very well. It felt more personal, like something someone could engage with. We added the word "solutions" to the list of options for names, and we called the list to approximately 8 for both English and Spanish. And we felt that it was important that the name be able to stand on its own. We thought, well, you know, okay. How about that? Can everybody hear me in Carson City?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. We also determined that the name should really be able to stand well on its own. Well on its own, without a logo or a tagline, because in our populations, it's going to critical for verbal communication about the name of the exchange without a lot of additional promotional tools, especially in our outreach efforts, which really rely on one-to-one communication, one-to-one networking, and grassroots. So we wanted it to be something that our population really understood easily and quickly. So then we took our shortened list of names that the booking group helped us cut it down to, and we took it to our own primary research focus. And this is the part that done it to last time, so my apologies. You'll see that the participants that we recruited were uninsured and underinsured individuals with incomes less than 200 FPL, between 200 and 400% of FPL, and Latinos with incomes less than 400% of FPL. We had 2 English groups and 2 Spanish groups. Our moderator did the groups in Spanish, and we wanted to make sure that we got a wide range of participation and a wide range of responses. So we those, and the Canon Survey Center helped us with those, and were able to recruit very well and had good participation. And excellent feedback, in some cases very vocal feedback. So they had a great time with their focus. So on the next page, you'll see the English names that we tested. This was the name developed from the list of other names that we saw states do, and our secondary research and the working group's input, especially some very, very helpful input from our Latino working group members who really helped us immensely. So I'm going to move right into what the focus groups found, the proof points from the English groups. We had several that we liked. There was a lot of them that we liked, but we're not the target population. So the ones that really worked well was Nevada Health Link, My Health Insurance Nevada, Health Benefit Solutions, Nevada Health Insurance Solutions, and the ones that used the word connect, that was not as strongly favored by our group as we thought it might be, given the California research. We had some words that we thought were very clever and very fun. It did not resonate with our population at all in any of the groups. The word link was a possibility. They felt that it had some nice connotations, but they thought it was probably really relating to the internet only, and so that kind of concerned us a little bit. But the words that had, the names that had my in front of them, and the words that had, the phrases that had solution or solutions in them, really resonated well with the population. So we also tested the Spanish names that you see, which I'm not going to even begin to pretend to announce. Maybe Rosemary can help me with that. But basically, we also tested these white Spanish names, again, corresponding Spanish names, because we knew we would need both of them in our work. And basically, the ones that were preferred by the Spanish group was Nevada Health Insurance Link. The My Health Insurance Nevada scored top in the Spanish group. Nevada Health Insurance Solution or Solutions, there was one group who really insisted on solutions because after they had the exchange concept described to them, they wanted to emphasize that it was more than one solution. There were solutions for them. And those were the top ones in the Spanish focus group. So we then took this back to the working group and said, okay, here's our research, here's our focus group research. What should we do to narrow this down, knowing that we have to eventually narrow it down to one? And so we worked with the working group and vetted the information and added clarity to the Spanish phrasing. Again, that was very, very critical in that process. We tried to discuss the balance of what our target audience needed and wanted versus our preferences for something a little more creative and clever. And there were things we all liked that didn't score very highly in our focus groups at all. They went really after much more literal names. And we had to step back and remember, we're not only branding an exchange, a product, we are trying to explain a brand new concept. And that is, so we have a big task to do with one name. So it helped us remember and helped us explain that our focus groups, our populations really preferred something a little bit more literal and a little bit more specific as to what this product is. So with that, we narrowed the list and added one more based on focus group research for both English and Spanish finalists. And so you'll see in step 5, option 1, My Health Insurance Nevada and Mi Seguro Medical Nevada. That is probably the one that rated top in both English and Spanish by pure counts in terms of people who picked it first. And just so you know, any name that we took to the focus group, we pre-reserved the URLs, because once the name potential is out there, we didn't want anybody going in and reserving the URL so that it could be purchased from them later on. So we really did an advanced job of reserving these URLs. The second option is Nevada Health Link, and Enlace de Seguro Nevada. Again, Link was perceived positively by both English and Spanish groups. They said it lends itself in their minds to an internet-based solution and is a contender if the exchange wishes to pursue that. And again, we reserve the URLs associated with this name. The next one is Nevada Health Insurance Solutions, Soluciones de Seguro Medical Nevada. Solutions immediately resonated with this target audience in both English and Spanish groups. They viewed it as relieving or relief, like a solution for them had some relief. And based on our research, we want to make sure that people who use the exchange feel confident and feel that they're going to get some relief by being able to afford quality insurance. And again, you'll see the URLs that we reserved. And then option 4, that the working group added, based on our research and the findings that we had with the people that had given us their top words, My Health Insurance Solutions, or Mis Soluciones de Seguro Medical. So, and then we reserved the URLs relating to both the English and the Spanish names. So those are our 4 options that we are recommending, again, based on our target population's feedback and input and our secondary research that we've done from other states. So our 4 options you'll see is My Health Insurance Nevada, Nevada Health Link, Nevada Health Insurance Solutions, and My Health Insurance Solutions. Those are our recommendations, which we feel any one of the 4 would work very well with our target population, and we have them all reserved in terms of URLs, so any one of these could be used and redirected to your website tomorrow. So these are the board's decision. Hopefully you'll find one that you feel maybe works better for you than others, or that you feel based on our research might work well with our target population even better. And after you hopefully find a name that you can select and approve today, what we will do is immediately go to tagline and logo options. And this is where we feel we may be able to scratch the itch and be a little bit more creative and add some less literal names. So a tagline can have a little bit more emotional or emotive approach to supplementing the brand name. The logo can also be very creative and very colorful and inspirational. So that we're recommending that we use one of these names that is probably more literal, maybe than we prefer. But again, our population has spoken, and these are the names that resonated with them. So once one is chosen, we'll go to logo and tagline. We will also put those back in focus groups because we don't want to use colors or tagline words or phrasing that offends or that doesn't resonate with our target population. And then also, we also want to keep in mind that this has to also not be in any way offensive to people who are over 400% FPL. So hopefully the literal name and a more creative approach to a tagline and a logo will do what we need to do in combination to explain quickly a very complex topic and product. So our goal is to bring the final name, logo, and tagline options back to the board in April. And then we will bring those, hopefully approved, we bring those to Xerox so that they can start using those on the board. And I think with that, questions and discussion.
Stephanie, thank you. You have one of your colleagues up here in Carson City. Did you want to identify yourself for the record and comment on
Sure.
some of the work that's been done?
Yeah, for the record, Rob Gadke. Like Stephanie said, I'm the creative director at KPS3, so I had a big hand in the development and coming up with these names. I think like Stephanie mentioned previously, we are very confident in all 4 of these names. So whatever decision is made, we feel very strongly that it'll accomplish the goal. And so now it's more of a preference to the board because again, we're very confident in all 4 of these recommendations.
Thank you. And then Ms. Atkins and Ms. Lewis, I think you participated in the focus groups. Do you want to, since both of you were part of that, do you want to lead the discussion on some of this?
Are you sure?
Well, we gotta get it started somehow.
Oh, okay, I'll start the discussion, then Atkins. Yes, I just will preface it with, I thought there were some much cooler names on the initial plan, which I had hoped we would go toward, so I'm a little disappointed, but I'm gonna get over it. Not quite there yet, but, I guess the question to me for the board to discuss is ease of understanding, what the exchange is from the name. You know, some of those URLs look really long to me, and I think it's gonna be hard on the materials and telling people what websites to go to. So I think there's something to think about that. And I think the comment about Nevada Health Link was the concern that it kind of talks about the exchange as an internet-based operation, which I think ultimately is the goal for us, that we do want to get more people applying online, you know, years down the road. So we not only have to look at this as what's going to work today, but hopefully what's going to also make sense in 5 years and in 10 years. You know, not knowing what technology will be then, but just something that kind of makes sense long term. So I guess those are just my comments for discussion.
Ms. Lewis?
I didn't really participate very fully in the overall review as it was going on, so I really don't have any comments.
I would ask Rob or Stephanie on Lynn's comment about the URLs being so long. Is there, do you have any?
Rob Gadke for the record. You know, when it comes to a URL, there's really 2 options. There's short and sweet, kps3.com, something very small, or it is acceptable as long as the words are very clear and very distinct. So myhealthinsurancenevada.com, though it is lengthy, the words are very easy to say, and they pair together nicely. There's also no double vowels in those that are a little confusing if there's 2 A's back to back. So I feel confident, though again, from just an overall look and a feel, it is nice to have a shorter URL. I don't think that these are going to hinder our traffic or our place on the website. I think just to chime in again on the comment about Link, I think that's a very interesting name, again, because so much of this is facilitated online. Personally, I don't feel that is a negative connotation. I think it's actually a positive. So just kind of echoing that comment about Link.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Is Dr. Ford, may I ask a question? You gave us 4 options and you said you'd be happy with any of them. They're not listed in order of preference by the marketing team. Thank you.
Ms. Kerr?
You know, my personal preference, which doesn't matter at all because I'm not the focus group, would be Nevada Health Link, but that doesn't matter because I don't think that it's favored. It doesn't appear to be very favored by the focus group. Really, I think the simpler the better. My Health Insurance Nevada, I would go with. That's just me and my. Did I say that before the vote?
Absolutely.
Okay. I know it's simple. It's from a trademark perspective, it's not very good. But that was not a legal opinion at all, which I can't give to this group. the other things just seem, the words, there's too many syllables. And if it's the simpler the better, keep it simple. My Health Insurance Nevada, that's what I would go with. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
Yes, I'm
This is
sorry.
Leslie Johnson.
Oh, Leslie, thank you, go ahead, please.
If KPS 3, narrowed this down to 4 and all of them would be strong candidates, I personally would really like it to be a snappier name, a little bit shorter, and so I really like Nevada Health Link the best of these choices. And I don't know that it has, the focus group obviously said what they did, but I automatically went to a link in a chain connecting me to my health insurance. I didn't automatically to the internet. So I don't think that plays out as a negative.
Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Luana Lewis. I would agree. I think that Nevada Health Link is a snappier name, and I'm not sure that most of the people that we will be dealing with will think of that necessarily as an internet connection. So I think that would resonate well with that group personally. So I think of that.
Insurance is just a long word.
Madam Chair, for the record, CJ Bowden, I would just like to say, with these name decisions, if the board, chooses options number 1, 3, or 4, we need to go through the Division of Insurance for final clearance on those choices because they include the term insurance on that. And then also with option 2, I would like to point out that the Spanish translation is not literal of Nevada Health Link because in Spanish you need to include Seguro Medical instead of just medical. That would become Nevada Doctor Link instead. So we need to include Seguro Medical in that translation.
I did sit in on one of the focus group meetings, and I think part of the discussion there steered me a little bit in a different direction, and that came from the focus groups, the Spanish focus groups, that they felt very strongly about the word "my" in it. And maybe you might talk about that just a little bit.
Certainly. For the record, Rob Yadke. Again, this term and the concept of a personal, of me, my, came up very positive in both the English and Spanish focus groups, as well as in the secondary research. So I will echo that those were positive and chosen very favorably. When we look at the actual counts, again, it was only 20 people in these focus groups. So we want to take that a little bit in consideration. But My Health Insurance Nevada was the top contender among Spanish and the third contender among English. So again, we tried to pick these top 3. They had to, a requirement to make this list was that they were in the top 3 for both sides, English and Spanish.
This is Marie Kerr. I'm certainly not the expert on marketing to the Latin American community, but I have been to Latin America several times, and indeed marketing materials in the United States to the Spanish community always seem to have this "me." There's this almost a cuteness associated with it. There's I don't know if it's a coolness. It's kind of more a relationship that's associated with me, and I think it would appeal strongly to the Latin American community, but. I'm not a marketing person, so this is just general observations.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Wait just a minute. We have Commissioner Kipper, and then I'll move it to Las Vegas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Scott Kipper. And I commend the work KPS3. In fact, they're doing work for the division as well on our website upgrade. And I got to tell you, we're very pleased with the work that is being done on our behalf. And the work that's been done here is, I think, very, very good. I would be a little bit concerned that any name connotes that this is the only health option, because there's going to be a significant insurance marketplace beyond the exchange. And so I would just be, mention to the board, that be advised that there is more than just an exchange if you have options or solutions that you're looking for.
CJ?
For the record, CJ Bowden, I completely understand Commissioner Kipper's concerns on that. From an enrollment standpoint, I loved people to think that the exchange was the place to go to get insurance, but I completely understand Commissioner Kipper's concerns.
All right, who, in Las Vegas?
It was Leslie Johnstone. I just wonder if maybe KPS 3 could talk a little bit about the tagline and what it can add to kind of if the other concepts, if we went with Nevada Health Link, could something in the tagline have in mind something attached to it, and how that might complement the logo or the brand name itself?
Sure thing, Rob Gadke.
Understand it has the focus group.
Rob Gadke for the record. I think when it comes to a logo and a tagline development, our philosophy is always one should be literal and one should pull on the emotional strings. Like we've mentioned here, most of these are fairly literal. And so that's why a tagline with any of these, I do believe we can pull in every Nevadan. We can bring a lot more of the personal and community effort into the tagline of the logo. But again, because we wanted this to stand alone without a tagline and without material, that was the reason for here. But yes, I do agree that we can bring all of those elements into the tagline.
Let me ask a question.
Levon Lewis.
Levon, go ahead.
Yes, I am just wondering if we could put my in front of Nevada Health Link. It's, I don't know whether that's supporting or whatever. But anyway, could we say my Nevada Health Link?
For that, I'd like KPS 3 and Rosemary Flores, who is in Las Vegas at the meeting down there, to comment as well on the Spanish translation, if that would be appropriate as well.
Good afternoon, I'm Rosemary Flores with KPS 3. And the literal translation of Nevada Health Link in Spanish really has to, it changes a bit. It's Enlace de Seguro Médico. So if if you added mi enlace de Seguro Médico, it wasn't tested.
What? Whoa, what's the point? It wasn't tested. Oh.
Yeah.
It
Does it
does
sound
not
funny?
sound as strong as Mi Seguro Médico, Nevada. There is the word enlace in Spanish, it means link, but then when you're putting it all together, it'll take a while, I would think, for the people to warm up to it. So maybe there's a way to go with the taglines, but it would translate to Mi enlace de seguro médico.
We have to have the exact translation in Spanish. It seems like we're struggling by trying to translate something that works in English into verbatim Spanish that doesn't quite work. Is there some way you can play with that, with option 2 Nevada Health Link in the Spanish translation, maybe making it not quite the same time, that it's a little snappier? I think that was a term Leslie used. I mean, we're looking for something that just rolls off the tongue, and one rolls off the tongue in English, but really doesn't roll off the tongue in Spanish.
And actually the translation, Nevada Health Link, Enlace de Seguro Médico, it is not translated verbatim. It had to be changed to make sense.
I guess my question is, obviously I took French in high school, which does not serve me very well in one day. Having said that, is there something you can do with the Spanish translation of Nevada Health Link to make it a little shorter and snappier without losing the basic feeling of Nevada Health Link? I mean, Is there something we can do to play with that Spanish version?
And right now I'm here, out on the spot, I don't see anything right at the moment. It's, even when I reviewed it with KPS 3, it's, and lastly is the word that best needs link, and then it's those together to address the
Just a stupid question, non-marketing question. Is it completely crazy to have one name in English and a different name in Spanish? Since they're not direct translations either way, could you have Nevada Health Link be equivalent of Mi Seguro Medico Nevada in Spanish? And you have two different names like that, one for English? Can you
Rob, you want?
Can I chime in? Rob Gadke for the record. It is fairly bad practice to do that, and we would not recommend going that route. The better route in those scenarios is to keep the English as the brand name. Again, when it comes to combining words or words that aren't necessarily direct translations, the better solution is to keep it in English and keep that as the brand name, and then bring in translations in all of the material and taglines and whatnot. So I think if that was the case and the board was feeling a little weary about the translation component, that would be our recommendation, is to just stick with the English component here and use the tagline and marketing materials for translation purposes.
Rob, let me ask you something, because when I went to the focus group, it really redirected my thought process, because I was looking at it from perspective of what I liked.
Certainly.
And so when we started talking about this target market and what they liked, there was a disconnect with what my preference was. But when I go back and look at your step 4, Nevada Health Link got 0 votes from the Spanish focus group. How did it end up on the last as one of the options?
Sure thing. Rob Gadke for the record. So these were only first place choices. So the numbers are out of first place only. So the term link and that one in general had a lot of positive feedback, and it did make the list, just not first place in there, if that makes sense.
People choosing it as their first selection, for the record, CJ Bowden, it could have been chosen by all of the people for the second choice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
So that would rate it higher than some of the others.
And then with respect to Commissioner Kipper's comment, and I respect your thought process on that comment, correct me if I'm wrong, if somebody, Mr. Hager, if someone wants the subsidy or the credit, we're the only place where they can get it.
That's correct.
So our target audience, again, largely is that 400% of poverty level and below. I guess I kind of like my part of the title because of that.
Yeah. This is Dr. Ford. I have a quick comment. I like that the Spanish translation of Nevada Link says health insurance, because the research said that was favorable to use the word health insurance. So I kind of like that the translation says health insurance, so for the Spanish-speaking population, they get that explanation in their Spanish title. So I'm kind of warming to option 2 because the translation now says health insurance. And because it says health insurance in Spanish, we don't have to clear it with the insurance commission, right?
This is Lynn, ma'am. Did someone want to answer that? Would that need to get clear? And then I had a comment, but I didn't want to interrupt.
Commissioner Kipper.
Yeah, for the record, Scott Kipper. Let me check with our legal staff, as they would have the ability to research that. When insurance brokerages or companies come to us with a name, we do research to make sure it's appropriate, and 2, has not been used before. And certainly that wouldn't be the case here, but it makes sure that it is appropriate and fits. We do have some standards, I believe.
Thank you.
Ron Klein, I actually was going to, just some of the kibitzing down here, and I think Mr. Sherman is actually subject for credit for that. But if you look at the other names of the states that they've used, not a single one has the word insurance in it. But I don't know if there's a message there for us or not, but that makes me sort of warm even more to option 2 as well. That health link with that Spanish translation of health insurance.
This is Lynn, if I can just make one other observation, agreeing with Mr. Kipper, I think, I'm guessing part of the reason why some of the other states have not used insurance is because the states are not providing the health insurance. And I think what the other states seem to have done is talk about connecting, finding, linking people to products, which I think is why, part of the reason I'm drawn to continue to be drawn to option 2. Options 1, 3, and 4, I don't want to use the word scam, but they kind of look like private companies that are trying to get health insurance business, and it doesn't really look like a broad-based connecting product to me. So those are my comments.
Ms. Atkins is prompting me to move to a motion that we adopt option number 2. She's far away from me, she can't hurt me. So I'm going to move that we adopt option number 2 with the English version and the current Spanish translation.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Second, Lynn Atkins.
All right. I'll open it up for just a little bit of discussion here before we call for the vote, because this is a lifelong branding here. Any other comments from board members? Ms. Lewis?
I'm sorry, I'm listening. I'm not being ready. I apologize. What was your question?
We're opening up for discussion. We have a motion and a second to adopt option number 2, and I just want to make sure that we get all the discussion on the record.
Yes, I
Okay. All right, Ms. Kerr.
I would note that if you look at the translation that was looked at by KPS 3 for Nevada Health Link, it's translated, and I don't know if this is what they talked about, Enlace Salud Nevada versus the translation that's on the choice for us to pick, which is Enlace de Seguro Médico Nevada, I think. And Enlace Salud Nevada was not viewed favorably by the Spanish community as being too vague. And so I'm not quite sure about the distinction there, because Nevada Health Insurance Link is the Enlace de Seguro Médico Nevada. And it's presented to us as the same choice. They kind of mixed it in the presentation on the last page for our solution, for our choices.
For the record, this is CJ Bowden. During that discussion in the focus groups, when I read through the focus groups report, salud in Spanish dictates health, the health of the person, and a lot of the Hispanic community in Nevada and the population that we're going to be serving are foreign to health insurance, and we wanted to make sure that it was clear to them that this was the place for health insurance and to come into the program for health insurance at this door. That's why it was changed from health to Seguro Medical.
So to underscore what Dr. Ford said, it's a perfect fix, because in English it's quick and snappy, it doesn't sound like a scam, and in Spanish it translates as health insurance. It sounds like the best of both worlds.
All right, do we have any other comments? Okay, I'll go ahead and call for the vote then. Why don't we do a roll call vote on this, since this is branding? You want to go ahead and...
Ms. Johnstone?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Dr. Klein?
Yes.
Ms. Kerr?
Yes.
Dr. Ford?
Yes.
Vice Chair Atkins?
Yes.
Chair Campbell?
Yes.
And it's unanimous.
Unanimous decision. We have a new name. All right, so next steps on this, Ms. Cruz, we're going for tagline, which will be coming up after this, is just so we know what the process is.
Yes, for the record, Stephanie Cruz, the next step will be taking the name, and because we already have the URLs reserved, and we will be developing taglines and logos to enhance this, and possibly even help define what it is even more. So you'll see a wide variety of taglines and some logo options, and you'll see that next board meeting. But we will be testing those with focus groups in our target population before you see it, so that we can bring research and rationale back with our options.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hager?
So just to be clear, really the next step is for the Commissioner of Insurance to ask his folks to make sure that the Spanish translation is okay. But it sounds like it should be okay.
Yeah, for the record, Scott Kipper, I don't think that is a problem, but I just want to make sure the board's aware. We are going to check, but I don't think that would be a problem.
What would be good if we knew it beforehand instead of
I agree.
too far down the pike?
Well, we will turn this around and get back to John by the end of the week.
Okay, thank you very much, I appreciate it. All right, if we have,
And I'm sorry, I have one more thing. So the name of our agency is still the Silver State Health Insurance Exchange. Legally, we are still the Health Insurance Exchange. So just want to make sure everybody realizes that this is our brand name. So we'll have, in some cases, 2 names here and there, but for our forward-facing name will be this new brand name. What was it, Nevada Health Link? So, it's a new name. Thank you.
all right,
May I ask one other question? I'm sorry, this is Lynn.
sure.
So the call center website will be Nevada Health Link, but will the Health Insurance Exchange, like the current site with all the board meetings and all of the administrative stuff, that will stay Silver State Health Insurance Exchange?
Probably not. We would probably change it all to Nevada Health Link. You might find someplace in there that it says Silver State Health Insurance Exchange, but the public will know us as Nevada Health Link. At least that was our intent.
But this website that we go to now that has all of this stuff is going to be different from the Xerox point of entry application website.
It was our intent to make them the same, to have them both be Nevada Health Link. Now, we'll discuss with KPS3 and with our DAGs to make sure if there's any problems with that, but it was our intent to have one forward-facing name, and that we would really only be the Silver State Health Insurance Exchange when we're talking at the legislature, but you'll start seeing all of our presentations switch to the Nevada Health Link with Silver State Health Insurance Exchange in small lettering.
All right, thank you.
All right. Do we want to take a 5-minute break, or do we want to press on?
Break.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back on the record a few minutes after the break.
The agency formerly known as.
Yes.
Come on, let's test it, make sure that people on the phone can hear us. Oh wow, it's more complicated than I thought. Can you guys hear us? You on mute? Are you guys on mute? Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Can you hear us?
I don't think they're hearing us. Leslie?
Yes.
You can hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent.
Good. You want to just test the phone?
Just want to see if there's.
I can figure out how to do it from the TV.
That one.
This one?
I think so.
All participants are now in interactive talk mode.
Anybody still on the phone? Can you hear us?
Yes.
Great. We're going to put it back on broadcast. We'll take it off of broadcast once we come to public comment again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're just testing the system to make sure we haven't lost anyone.
Thank you. All participants are now in listen-only mode.
Okay, let's go back on the record. We are at agenda item number 7, which is discussion and possible action regarding the merging of the call centers run by the Division of Welfare and the Health Insurance Exchange call center. So, Mr. Hager, is this your
Yes.
item?
For the record, John Hager. So in January, the Xerox staff came to us with a concern. We have been saying all along that individuals who call our call center or the welfare call center, if they're in the wrong place, they'd be able to go to the opposite place with a warm transfer. And basically that means that the CSR, the call center representative, would say, oh, okay, I've helped you as far as I can go. You need to talk to a Medicaid representative. Let me get somebody on the line for you. They would wait on hold for a few seconds. The person from the Medicaid call center would say, how can I help you? And they say, I have Mr. Smith here who needs some help with his Medicaid coverage. That idea sounds great if the time to answer for those calls is relatively low. And so the Xerox contract has a 60-second service level agreement. We would expect that those would be a lot lower than that on average, but certainly the minimum or the maximum service level or the maximum call time to answer for Xerox will be 60 seconds, or they would be subject to financial penalties. So I'm sure they don't want to do that, and they don't want to come up in front of the board to say that they didn't make it. So I'm confident, and we'll see in the next report their staffing plan. I'm confident that they'll be able to make that. The concern is that Medicaid has a very long time to answer. I believe in November, the average time to answer all calls in November was 24 minutes. And we can't possibly have our call center representatives on hold for 24 minutes while we wait to get a live body to help them out. And again, that's on average. My understanding is that the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services is working on they have an enhancement decision unit on their budget to bring those times down. And I'm not sure if that's part of simply the Affordable Care Act and the Medicaid expansion, or if it's a combination of Medicaid expansion plus adding additional bodies to get that time to answer down. They're also working on, they've got a request for funding for a new infrastructure, IT infrastructure that will help bring that time to answer down. So the concern, of course, is that warm transfer won't work under the current arrangement. And so as it stands now, I would say that there is no possible way that we could subject our call center to that kind of wait time. And so as it is, we would have to do a cold transfer, which is we say, I'm sorry, we can't do anything more for you. You need to talk to a Medicaid representative, and we send it over to Medicaid, and they basically wait on hold for potentially 20 minutes. Now, obviously, sometimes it's a lot less. Sometimes it's a minute or two, and sometimes it's a lot more, perhaps an hour. So, that's an average time to answer. So we are, as it stands now, we will not be able to function with a warm transfer. So that's the first thing I wanted to bring to the board's attention. So as we tried to figure out, well, how are we going to get through this? What are we going to do? We started thinking, well, what is our core competency here at the exchange? And really, it's enrolling people in health insurance. So when you look at our web portal enrolls people in health insurance, whether that's Medicaid, CHIP, qualified health plan with advanced premium tax credit or without the advanced premium tax credit. Our job is to get people covered. And that's what our web portal does. But our call center is still separate. So that's kind of it's kind of a weird thing between the two items. So we have a web portal that does both, and really you don't know, a lot of people won't know whether they're Medicaid eligible or whether they are qualified health plan eligible until they get through the application process the first step of the process, and if you've been watching the news, the single streamline application that the feds have provided is, I think, 16 pages for a family of 3. That's the streamlined application. We are working to make ours as streamlined as possible, but there are a lot of questions that we have to answer to make sure you get to the right spot. Now, to do that, if you are very clearly not Medicaid or APTC eligible, there'll be a couple of real quick screening questions, and we'll say, it appears you're not eligible for APTC. We're going to send you straight to Shop and Compare. Or it appears you're APTC eligible, answer a few more questions, and then there's a break where it says, it appears you're not Medicaid eligible, go straight to Shop and Compare. Or if you'd really like to, you can try to enroll in Medicaid. So you'll have the ability to fill out all 16 pages of that application online or whatever that ends up being, but we're going to help people that don't need to fill out the entire application to get to through the process as quickly as possible. So if a person calls up to the call center during open enrollment and says, okay, I want to enroll in a qualified health plan, they won't necessarily know until they get to the end of the process that really they should have been over at the Medicaid call center enrolling in Medicaid, and vice versa. So really the functionality of that call center is merged until you get to the point where they know that they are or they are not eligible for Medicaid, and then we go into the Shop and Compare. So all of these things kind of make a good case for merging the Medicaid and the exchange call centers. There's 4 potential solutions. So number 1 was accept the higher time to answer, and in this, I don't think I included it, but we would need to accept that we are not going to do warm transfers. They simply would not work. Option number 2 on page 2 is that welfare increase the number of staff and upgrades the call center technology, which is basically what they're working on. I'm still not sure whether or not we could do a warm transfer. Even if the average time to answer is 2 or 3 minutes, that's 2 or 3 minutes. Our CSRs would not be eligible or available to answer other people's calls. I could be comfortable with 60 seconds, 30 seconds, 20 seconds, but beyond that, I'm not sure it's fair to Xerox to require that when it's not their fault that they've got to wait on hold for such a long time. So we need to consider that. So the other options are that Xerox assumes responsibilities for the Medicaid call center requirements, and then finally that Xerox assumes responsibility for the entire welfare call center, including Medicaid, SNAP, and TANF calls. Now, when you go beyond Medicaid, so we're really talking about, for us, it's enrolling people in health insurance. So enrolling people in SNAP and TANF are perhaps a little bit beyond the scope of what the exchange does, and that may have to be a separate contract between Xerox and welfare, or they could request that we expand our scope through the length of our contract, but they manage that piece of it. I'm not sure exactly how we work that out, but we can make it work. The other thing that you can do with option number 3 is that we combine the call centers and then we provide the IT infrastructure, the IVR, which is the interactive voice recognition. It's the phone tree that you go through, and the case management system. We provide that to the welfare call center for SNAP and TANF, so that the backbone is the same. It would reduce the difficulties between 2 systems talking to each other, and it would allow welfare to lease a system that is continually upgraded and is the responsibility of Xerox, rather than buying a system for 5 or 10 years and then having to rebuy another system. So the gist of this report, this really is, for all intents and purposes, it is the decision of welfare, the Department of Health and Human Services, and the governor's office. However, if they decide to do this going forward, we'll need to be able to move quickly to amend the contract and go to BOE. Now, generally, I think that contract amendments are an administrative function, but I think that this is such it has such an impact on the exchange that I think that the board needs to fully understand the concerns and the issues involved, and either say, yes, we want to go with whatever the Department of Health and Human Services finally decides to go with, or we don't agree with that solution. But this is really it's combining functionality that we had not considered before. Again, based on the information that you see in this report, I think it's appropriate and I think it would be beneficial to the exchange. In addition to the savings or the cost, and in all likelihood, there will be a slight cost on top of what welfare currently pays for technology and positions. But the question is whether or not that extra cost is worth the extra customer service. From our perspective, there's another cost that currently Xerox bears, but that is the trunk lines that are, I don't know, several $100s a month. But then, so it creates a need for additional trunk lines. Plus, if we do a transfer, they're using our 800 number, our toll-free number that's toll-free to the customer, but not to Xerox. And so anytime there's a transfer, that line is incurring charges. Now, the contract with Xerox states that Xerox will pay those fees, so the risk is currently on Xerox. However, we feel that it's our job at the staff level and at the exchange level to reduce the Xerox cost as much as possible so that when we go forward for a contract amendment, potentially we can reduce costs to the exchange as well. So that's the report, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Before we open this up for discussion, I want to make it really clear for the record that the health insurance exchange does not have the authority to make any of these decisions. These are decisions that Mike Wilden will be making with the governor's office and through the legislative process and budgetary process. What you're giving us are the options that they're looking at, and then asking the exchange or the board that once that decision's made, that you have permission to move ahead and adjust contract if we need to do so.
Correct, because really it's a three-party decision.
Right.
There is the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services who would be benefiting from this contract. There is Xerox that would be performing it, but it's also our contract. So we would need to be able to approve or go forward with whatever is decided with welfare.
Okay. Does this impact our budget, or would it impact Health and Human Services budget?
This certainly impacts theoretically it would impact our budget because there would be a pass-through in our budget. So the money that welfare is currently getting from general fund, Title 19, Title 21 funds goes to pay their call center, and they pay those expenses. Instead, what would happen is they get those funds. Xerox would run the call center. They would bill the exchange with the rest of the bill, and then we would turn around, bill welfare. They would pay that general fund, Title 19, Title 21 to the exchange, and we'd pay Xerox. Sounds a little bit complicated, we realize that, but that's how the contract would work. So it would have an impact on our budget, but it would not impact our fee, which is the big thing that we'd want to be concerned about. It would not impact the fee to carriers.
I'll open it up for discussion.
Madam Chair, this is Leslie.
Yes, Leslie?
John, what kind of timeframe are you expecting for the decision to be made by Mr. Weldon's office?
I was hoping that it would have been made by now, but I'm not sure where they're at. So potentially in the next week or two. The concern, of course, that we have is the longer that's delayed, the longer we have to delay making a decision on how we set up our call center as well. I believe Xerox currently has a location in Las Vegas that is designed for our current staffing levels. If we decide to expand this, they'll have to work out expanding that call center or providing additional locations for that additional staff. I'm sure they can do that, but it creates delays. The other issue is if we are going to go forward with the separate call centers, then we have to start building the technology between their case management systems and our case management systems, their phone line. We have to make sure the phone lines are connected properly and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the stuff that we take for granted when you call somebody up, it has a lot of IT infrastructure required. So soon.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Then I guess we need to have some sort of direction from the board to Mr. Hager on what to do once that decision's made.
Madam Chair, this is Leslie. I would move that the executive director be given authority to implement the decision that's made by Department of Human Services and the Governor's Office on this matter.
All right, do we have a second?
Devon Lewis, I second the motion. Devon Lewis, I second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. We have a motion and second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 8, which is the staffing plan for the call center.
And for that presentation, I've asked Bill DeLang with Xerox to come forward to give the presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Bill DeLang, for the record, Bill DeLang with Xerox. And I want to congratulate the Nevada Health Link. And I promise the call center will not say the NHL or the NHL. So for the record.
Don't say goodbye.
What I'd like to do briefly is just talk about some of our staffing. I know over the past several months we have brought to the board several ideas about call center staffing and per minutes per call. What I'd like to focus on today is, if you will notice on the 10 minutes and 3 minutes, that is really a carryover from last fall based on the pre-projection of enrollment numbers. So I would like to ask the board to ignore those minutes per call. What I would like to focus on, and where we're going to get to, is what we did over the past couple of months is really analyze our numbers. And as a Xerox corporation, we have numerous call centers around the country, around the world, taking Medicaid, CHIP calls within the United States, a Medicare. What we did is we took a lot of our analysis and research and worked with our workforce coordinator person, and really just kind of feed a lot of the modeling as far as enrollment. When are peak times? When does it level out from open enrollment to end of enrollment? And then throughout the year. So what I'd like to direct your attention to is the call center representatives that we have for open enrollment for October 2013 through March 2014. And I really want to point out the CSRs that we have currently staffed based on the anticipated open enrollment membership, our anticipated contacts received, and I won't walk through all the math. What it comes down to is 10 calls per CSR per day. And what that takes into account is we could have maybe a 2% of calls that might be an hour in length, helping somebody through enrollment. It could be somebody 30 minutes. What we did is we have a model that shows X percentage for an hour, X percentage at a 30-minute rate. A bulk of what we anticipate calls will be at maybe a 10 or 15-minute rate. So overall, we plugged all this into our workforce model and came up with our CSR calls per day per CSR. Now again, that's during open enrollment. Throughout the year, of course, some of the calls will decrease in per minutes. So I really want to focus on the calls per day. We do have a contingency plan in place, so should those calls during open enrollment spike even further than we anticipate, we'll either implement an additional at-home workers or utilize other call centers to help us out here in Nevada.
And for the record, John Hager, I've got one more thing to add. We sent out a request to all of the state-based exchanges to get a feel for how for the average length of time per enrollee, and they basically said the average time was about 20 to 25 minutes. So with this 10 calls per day with an 8-hour day, it should give us enough capacity to deal with kind of what the nation is expecting, the state-based exchanges are expecting as a whole.
Do we have any questions from board members?
This is Lynn. I have a question, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Atkins.
Now, I'm not sure if I'm comparing apples to apples, and I'm probably not. But back in November, when we were analyzing how many navigators and outreach specialists we were going to need, there was some information given to us about how many people plan to buy insurance online without help, how many plan to provide online with the help of the exchange and how many navigators we might need. And I just want to make sure everyone's kind of using the same data, because that said about, about 3% we're going to provide online without any help. And these projections are showing, I'm assuming 50% through the web portal without, I'm assuming that's without any help. And again, I'm not sure if the questions or the data is apples to apples, but I guess I'm maybe asking Mr.
For the record,
You kind of faded out there. Are you still there?
I think, I think my comment faded. I just kind of.
Okay.
It was more of a, I pulled up the figure from November, and again, I don't know if it's apples to apples or not, or if numbers have been updated, so it's more of a, I'm just kind of dumping it in Mr. Hager and CJ's lap.
for the record, John Hager, yes. So the percentages, there was a good section, 19% weren't sure, so we basically took that 19% and disregarded it. But it ended up being about 4% that would purchase online without help. And this is a survey by the PwC Health Research Institute, and you can find this on our Finance and Sustainability Plan on page 7. It says 36% would go through a community resource center, which we took to be navigators. And when you take out the not sure group, then that goes up to 44%. 18%, which goes up to, I think it was 22% through a broker, and the remaining 24%, which goes up to 28%. Through the call center. So if we're looking at 28%, I think that matches the numbers going through the call center.
In the web
Thank you for doing the math. The doctor next to me did the math as well.
CJ, did you want to say something?
No, John handled it very well. Thank you.
Okay. All right, do we have any statistics from Massachusetts on how heavy their call center was when they instituted this?
I don't believe we have any statistics from Massachusetts from when they implemented this. I can't remember if they were one of the states that said they were expecting 20 minutes, but it was pretty much, I mean, we had, I think, 10 different states replied with somewhere between 20 and 25 minutes.
You know, and I was speaking with John before the meeting today that there was an article in either New York Times or Wall Street Journal in the last 3 or 4 days where they said they were expecting that first go around to be around 45 minutes, which is about double of what the states are expecting. And
Well,
if that's true, are we covered?
So,
You know?
so to be clear that the 20 to 25 minutes is an average for the phone calls. We expect that a full application through the call center will take 40 minutes to 60 minutes. But that's also offset by the calls that were, hey, can you explain what a deductible is? And then, okay, thank you, see you later. So there's some of them will be very short calls, and some of them will actually step the entire way through the application. We also plan to rely heavily on navigators and brokers. We do think that the budget provided for the navigators and brokers is sufficient for the population, even if we push a few of those calls to navigators and brokers if we want to, or if the caller wants to. So I think we've got a good plan in place. Again, the 10 minutes or 10 calls per day, if you have an 8-hour day, you're looking at 40, 50 minutes a call. So there should be sufficient capacity. The other thing that is not included on this page is that overflow to other call centers and to the call center reps that they have at home that are on standby for calls.
This is one other question. When do you plan on starting your hiring for these positions?
They already have.
Thank you, Bill DeLange for the record. Actually, part of our staffing plan is we have hired a call center manager, a training manager, and they're working on all the documents as we speak. Most of the call center representatives will be hired at the end of July, first part of August, to go through the proper training And also, we have a quality assurance manager and quality assurance specialist that are coming up. So it's beginning currently.
Do you have any other
This
questions?
is Savon Lewis.
Yes, Ms. Lewis?
Yes, this is Savon Lewis. Will your call center people who are working from home have the same training as the people who work in the centers? Your overflow people.
Bill DeLange, for the record, absolutely. As a matter of fact, part of our training plan is to have the at-home workers in the office for an extended period of time, maybe 30, 45 days, until they're comfortable, and we feel that they're comfortable with our QA program. At that time, we will send them home. So we do have overlapping training going on starting at the end of July.
Any other questions? If there are none, thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
report. Do we need to approve this, or is this just information only?
It was for possible action, but there's no action necessary.
Okay. All right, thank you. Let's move on to item number 9, which is the audit protocols and standards for the exchange. Mr. Haycock?
For the record, Damon Haycock, Finance and Research Officer for the Exchange. This report is on the audit protocols to be used by the Exchange to perform an audit review or study of Exchange activities. The report itself is, one paragraph, but as you can see in attachment A, those are the actual draft protocols that we are recommending to the board to be approved in full. I'll go over them briefly. There are statutory and regulatory audit requirements that are required of the exchange to be audited on a periodic basis. All audits that will occur at the exchange will have a corresponding report, as well as information on the findings or issues, the responses back to the auditing entities, and the plans of correction if necessary, and they will be presented to the board at the following board meeting after the audit is complete. So to discuss some of the audit protocols, we must understand that the federal government requires through OMB Circular A-133 that all non-federal entities receiving federal funding of $500,000 or more in a year is required to perform a single audit. It is a financial audit. Because the exchange is a general fund entity, we fall under the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, otherwise known as the CAFR. It is performed every year by the Office of the State Controller, so by default, we adhere to that audit protocol already. If the exchange becomes an enterprise fund, we will need to engage an external independent auditor to perform this audit in accordance with the rules and regulations. We will also have a functions and operations audit, which I brought to the board last board meeting. It was performed by the Division of Internal Audits at the Department of Administration. That satisfies NRS 695I, and that is the requirement that the board produce an annual audit on its functions and operations. And so we intend to utilize the same process in the future, utilizing the Division of Internal Audits. If we become an enterprise fund, we will try to streamline the process and add that to that financial audit through the external independent auditor. We also feel it's very important to audit the business operations solutions vendor. We want to make sure that we do that on a quarterly basis at the beginning. We're going to engage an independent auditor who specializes in eligibility and enrollment transactions. That audit will occur at the end of the quarter starting December of this year, as well as March 31st of next year, June 30th of next year, and then every 6 months thereafter. The exchange will notify the BOSS vendor of any findings or issues, and then provide the BOSS vendor an opportunity to respond to those. And then those responses and any plans of action, again, with the report will be provided to the board at the following board meeting. We also have an internal controls audit that is required by the State Administration Manual under Section 2418, and that is performed by completing something called a self-assessment questionnaire provided by the state. As you remember from the last board meeting, one of our findings was in our internal audit was that we did not have the appropriate policies and procedures, which we rectified immediately with that comprehensive internal controls document. And so we utilized that self-assessment questionnaire to do sample tests against transactions and processes and responsibilities and how the operation flows through those internal controls, and we report that back. Additionally, every even year in July, the actual report on internal controls is due to the financial management, and we again utilize that self-assessment questionnaire. Finally, there are a few other federal audits that are required by CMS or by the Health and Human Services. The Secretary of the Health and Human Services subjects the exchanges to an annual audit, as well as the Comptroller General requests that the exchange participate in a study within the first 5 years of operation. The exchange will work diligently with those auditors, just as they do with the auditors of the state, and we'll provide, again, a report on any findings, issues, responses back to those entities, and plans of correction to the board. That basically sums up our audit protocols report. If you have any questions, I'd be willing to take them.
Do any of the board members have questions of Mr. Haycock? No? Mr. Hager?
This is Leslie Johnstone.
Yes, Ms. Johnstone?
I was just going to ask if it was Mr. Hager's intention and the chair's intention just to have those reports provided or discussed at each board meeting after the final.
For the record, excuse me, for the record, John Hager, it was our intent to bring back the audits at once the audit has occurred and a report has been provided by the auditor, then staff will typically respond to the report, and then it is compiled into a single report, and that's usually brought back to the board, or we would expect that to be brought back to the board. For the financial audit, the function and operations audit, and the business operations solution vendor audit. Additionally, the findings for the federal audits, we'd expect to bring those back to the board as well. The internal controls audit, I did not anticipate in bringing that to the board. In my previous job, we didn't bring the internal controls audits to the board. We can if you would like, although those are typically seen as an internal administrative function, and we would have to probably redact quite a bit of information in those audits before we brought them to the public and to the board. But if the board wishes to see the internal controls audit, they can. But again, that's really only a self-assessment. Basically, we get a form from the Department of Administration. We fill out the form and determine how we're doing. So I don't know if it's called an audit. I think it's important to make sure that we do that to make sure that we are following procedures. Whether this rises to the level of that the board wants to see it or not, I'm not sure. But really, the functions and operations audit will bring a lot of those issues in that audit to the board as well. So that might be duplicative for the board's purposes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, as one board member, I would say that the internal controls that a financial audit that are incorporated into a financial audit would suffice. So I would need to see the self-assessment from my perspective.
Okay, but I mean, we're putting on the record that this internal control audit is a self-assessment, that it is not something coming out of the Department of Administration. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, do we have any other
Madam Chair.
questions? Yes,
Not to,
Commissioner Kipper.
for the record, Scott Kipper, not to pile on, but probably pile on. The exchange, we acting essentially like a third-party administrator, since you will be collecting premium and then dispersing that to various carriers. So I will check, but I would guess that there'll be an examination type of requirement from the Division of Insurance as well. Now, we have had some luck dealing with some of the other similar entities, taking some of the audit work that has been done by certified CPAs or other similar type examiners, and using that information so that we don't increase the cost of our examinations. But I will double check and come back to the board to make sure that if there is a function by the division, because there is an exchange of premium dollars, that we can examine as efficiently and as effectively and as at minimal as much cost as possible.
Okay. And then, Mr. Haycock, what about legislative audits?
Madam
I may
Chair.
have missed it, but I don't think
Yeah,
I see
Madam
it.
Chair, legislative audit, Dan Haycock for the record, legislative audits will occur from time to time with agencies throughout the state, but because they're not on a standard rotational basis like these other ones where I left those out. At any time, a legislator or the legislature can opt to have an audit of any state agency and any state function. So we didn't address it specifically because it's not something that any agency actually builds into their audit plan because it doesn't happen very often, but we will respond to it exactly as we would with any other audit. We would assist the staff and the audit staff that would come here, provide all the information that we could legally provide, and then we would participate in the audit, develop a report, look at the issues and findings, and then submit them for review and approval.
Okay, but there would be an expectation by the board that that audit would come before the board?
Absolutely. Yes,
ma'am. Yeah. Okay, so it looks like we've added two provisions to this agenda item then.
Small ones.
So just to clarify, on the DOI's audit of Xerox as a TPA, or the exchange as a TPA, is that something that is typically on the record? Is it something that has confidential areas to it, or is it something we could bring before the board?
There is, the current protocol is that during the examination, all the information that is being collected and analyzed during the process is strictly confidential until the exam report is published, shared with the examinee, in this case the exchange or the board, and then if there is no objection, I think it's 30 days after that notification of no objection or acceptance of the exam report, then that report is public.
Okay.
Good to know. All right, Ms. Johnstone, I'm going to ask you because you've been so intimately involved in state agencies in the past. Is there anything else that might hit us on an audit that we're not covering in this?
Not that it comes to mind. There may be reviews that are done by the Department of Administration that wouldn't be part of a standard audit process, but no other official audit
Okay.
that I can think of.
All right, I think this is information only. Again, we don't need board approval on this. So thank you very much for your report, Mr. Haycock. Next item on the agenda is agenda item 10, which is the process for performance review for the executive director. Ta-da!
The fun one. For the record, John Hager, Executive Director. You know, I was telling staff, I said I've been reviewed before, I've reviewed others before, I've created review processes for others before, but I never created a review process for myself. So this is an interesting one. So in creating this process, we looked at several different groups. We looked at the Public Employee Benefits Program, which administers the healthcare program for state employees and retirees. The Public Employee Retirement System, which administers the pension plan for all public employees in the state. And then, since I worked there, I pulled up the U.S. Navy fitness reports and counseling records and looked at those as well. There's pros and cons to what was provided by each of those groups. The Public Employee Benefits Program has a more broad evaluation method. It says that the board will discuss the executive director as it pertains to the 9 items that are listed on pages 2 and 3, but there's no specific criteria for evaluating, simply that we're going to talk about that those items. For the Public Employee Retirement System, it was a little more concise, or I should say precise. they've got an evaluation application or document. I think it's 9 pages long, and for each of the different functions, there are basically performance criteria that the executive director fills out beforehand to say, did I meet that standard, or did we meet that standard? And then there's a checkbox for the board to say, does not meet standards, or exceed standards, and then some place to write comments on it. But that also is written at the board level, so it's the board discusses it, and then I guess the chair writes it down. In both of those methods, the difficulty is that all of the comments really have to be made in public, because they're public meetings and public boards. They have to be made in public. And from the experience at PEB and from talking with the director of PEB and the director of PERS, the problem is that you don't necessarily get candid feedback in a public setting. One of the things that boards like to do is make sure that they're behind their executive director until they're not. And there's no middle ground, really. You're either behind the director or you're not. And we have discussions. That doesn't mean that we don't have discussions about things and we disagree about things. And that I get calls from each of you now and then that says, hey, you screwed that up, or you should fix it, or you should do it this way. And I would hope that would continue, that it wouldn't take a formal process to do that, because I would say I really get a lot more information out of those one-on-one discussions where you say, hey, you should have done it this way, or you might consider doing it this way. That helps out a lot. On the other hand, there is perhaps a fiduciary duty or a responsibility of the board to make sure that you are reviewing my performance, to make sure that you have that check in the box per se, to say that yep, you're going along the path that we want, or no, you're not. The other part to that is right now, as it stands, if you guys, and I can't imagine it would ever come to this, but if you want to fire me, 4 of you have to be upset enough to do that, and it has to be agendized 3 days in advance, and so I get a 3-day peek at what's coming down the pipe. On the other hand, if you do this performance and you have on the agenda not only an evaluation but a vote of confidence or no confidence, you could completely blindside me and then say, you know what, you're out, and see you later. So there's pros and cons to both ways, just something to consider. So on page 4, we looked at the various performance categories from PEB, PERS, and the Navy, tried to combine them where it made sense, and then on page 5 came up with kind of a recommendation on how to do, not a recommendation, but a possible way to do this. Trying to make it, and keep in mind this is from my very analytical numbers approach, and that's why you see it this way. But one of the things that was really good about the Navy evaluation method was that they said exactly what was below standards, meet standards, or exceed standards. And so while there is some objectiveness in deciding where exactly in the scale you fall, it's pretty clear. It's more clear than just saying he meets standards or he does not meet standards, or what have you. So came up with, tried to make the performance categories a little bit more concise and fit the exchange. Also put some weights on it. Truly my performance is the performance of the exchange and how well we accomplish the mission, how well we meet the strategic goals. And so that was certainly weighted a lot higher than the rest of it. I think it's important that I have good relationships with the board members, so that's in there. Stakeholder relations, one of the, I think it was PERS, separated out stakeholder relations from relationships with the legislature and the governor's office. I think PEB did not have stakeholder relations in that. I think that the stakeholder relationships should be combined into one. And you could decide to separate it out, but I think it made sense to combine it into one item and it would encompass both of those. I think leadership is important. Personally, I think leadership is more important than 10%, but I don't know where you take away from other things in here. And then expertise. So there's a couple things. There's the categories and how you grade those categories, and then there's the process, and whether that is simply you all have this in front of you and in a board meeting you talk about how you would grade me on each of these items, or if you go in advance, you each grade me on these items, and then you either bring it to the board and talk about it, which is sort of how we do evaluations for RFPs. The individual committee members will grade the vendors and then discuss it. And so now you've got something written down, and you can, oh yeah, I didn't think about that, I'll change this. The other way to do it is to grade it, give it to one person to compile, and then you have an average or what have you. However, even if you compile it, all of the comments of the board members would have to be made public. So that still creates that issue of everything has to be public, and could reduce on the candid nature of the review. And then there's the timing and when exactly you should do that review. A lot of so PERS and PEB both do the reviews in the January-February timeframe after the end of the calendar year. I would recommend pushing it a little bit because, first of all, the first open enrollment ends in March, and so we can see how well we did during the entire open enrollment. Second of all, the Division of Insurance and Exchange have committed to bringing back reports regarding plan certification policies, and we indicated that those would be delayed after the end of a plan year by perhaps 3 to 4 months. Additionally, if you were to do a review in, say, March, April, or May, we move into June, where we start discussing our decision-making process for the board to be approved, for the budget to be approved in August of the even number years. So you could do a review of the strategic plan, review of the board bylaws, and direct staff regarding budget priorities in June. So a review of my performance might fit well in doing that just prior to that in May. And with that, my recommendation is to direct staff regarding the evaluation of the executive director.
All right, I'll open it up for discussion.
Without violating the spirit of the open meeting law, it's sensitive to the fact that there are things that we somewhat want to say in private that we don't want to say in public. Is there a way for individual members, board members, to meet with you for 5 or 10 minutes at some point and say something informally and then still go through a public process, which I understand is a legal requirement?
I believe so, but I'm going to...
Dr. Klein, we're going to have Dennis Belcourt, who's our Deputy Attorney General, help us through this.
Dennis Belcourt, Deputy Attorney General. One-on-one meeting with John would not constitute a violation of the open meeting law. I would not need to comply with that, so that's permitted under the open meeting law.
Could we, I don't know how you feel about this, do we keep that an informal thing? Would that be something as part of our normal process where there's a written evaluation, and evaluation process is a individual meeting with each board member? Is that something we can incorporate into the process? Or are we we're not violating the meeting?
As long as it's just you and John, one person and John, the executive director, that would not be a problem.
Would it, Mr. Belcourt, would it be appropriate then as part of a board evaluation, self-evaluation, that members, or one of the questions is, have you spoken with the executive director? I don't know what the question would be, that you've done some sort of communication with the executive director on management or skill set or evaluate. I don't know how you'd want to title it.
You're speaking in terms of the next agenda item, which is board self-assessment.
Now, these are all part of, what I would consider good governance issues.
Well, that would be an open meeting, of course,
Right.
if you're going to discuss among the board self-assessment, and you could certainly discuss whether they've taken the opportunity to give input to the executive director.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is Leslie Johnstone. I have a couple of comments on what Mr. Hager put together. One is, I think it's most important that, as with any management level, that the individual board members talk with John on an as-needed basis, good or bad, about how they perceive his performance. Because I agree with what John said, that is the most meaningful form of feedback that people will receive, and obviously more timely than anything that we're going to do as a joint board. The evaluation form itself that John put together, I personally don't like having a scoring system for an executive level. I think there are some, the categories are good, with the exception I would separate stakeholders internal to the state, meaning the relationship and the working relationship that he keeps with the legislature, the governor, and other executives within state government be separate from those outside of state government. So I would try to not agonize over this because it's an awkward situation at best, and simply have the board evaluate in public or make their comments in public around the categories that John proposed, with the one exception of breaking out the stakeholders, and not go through a scoring process per se.
Okay. Do we have any other comments or suggestions from board members? If there are none, it sounds like you did a pretty comprehensive report that everyone
This is
likes.
my voice, and I feel that it does evaluate those issues that are important for the executive director and important to the board. So I think you did a good job.
There's your
There you go.
All right, we'll see you next year.
Oh, got that done. What?
As an evaluation.
How about the time frame that Mr. Hager is suggesting that in May? Is that something that's?
This is
Mentioned it.
Leslie Johnstone. I certainly was thinking, let's find out how the open enrollment goes. So somewhere between April and May, I think is the appropriate time. And then the cycle of relooking at the strategic plan and in preparation for budget development makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay.
Of 2014.
All right. So that's what I was going to ask. Is then the first review would occur in April or May of 2014. Is that your suggestion?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it would happen annually after that, but because of what's going on with the new state agency, I think 2014 ought to be the first formal.
Okay. Any other suggestions or comments? All right, Ms. Johnstone, since you led some of that discussion, do you want to make a motion to that and see if we can get a second?
Yes, I'll move that we take the suggestions of the executive director with a couple of changes. One being that the board evaluate on the categories that are proposed in the scoring, but that the evaluation not be a numeric scoring approach. And the other difference would be that the stakeholder groups would be considered internal to the state and external stakeholders. And that the first evaluation be done approximately May of 2014.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second to that?
Second, Lynn Evans.
All right, any further discussion? Yes.
Ms. Johnson, can I clarify, you're talking internal to state government and then for stakeholders, so state government relations and then stakeholder and then other stakeholder relations?
Yes, that was my intent. So state government would be other department, when within the state, the legislature, and the governor's office.
Thank you.
All right, we've got a motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item number 11, which is the method for the board to perform a self-assessment.
For the record, John Hager, so you noticed that I did the evaluation one before the self-assessment, which does not have a report. I really didn't have much to bring for this. The Public Employee Benefits Program does a board self-assessment. The comments that I received is it doesn't provide a whole lot of value to the board or to the public or to the director for that matter. I don't know exactly what the board might want to do with this. We could come up with several categories to talk about, but again, I don't know how valuable that would be. It is kind of an awkward thing, assessing your own performance in public. I don't know if it's giving yourself a pat on the back or telling the board or the public that you think that we did a bad job at this item or that item without singling any particular board member out. So I think it might be helpful to have Ms. Johnstone's comments on this as well, since she sat in a position similar to mine previously.
Madam Chair, this is Leslie Johnstone. So I went through this twice, and I think the hardest part of the process was that the board members had a hard time evaluating the board as a whole, especially if there had been any turnover, as opposed to evaluating themselves as an individual board member. And to the point where we kind of deferred on the scoring the second time because it was just hard to separate the two issues. And John may be able to speak to participant surveys or other forms that the board can get feedback about its performance. It's just, I don't know of any other board that has an effective process for evaluating themselves.
Is there statutory requirement?
I don't believe there's a statutory requirement for this.
There's certainly not a statutory requirement in 695I.
Right.
Is there a broad statutory requirement for boards in general?
No.
So that there's not a requirement.
Well, and where there's a fiduciary responsibility of the board to you for self-evaluation, I wonder if the mere fact that we're political appointees, I don't know. Leslie, on your experience with it, was your board required to have that self-evaluation? I know publicly traded companies have that responsibility. In the private sector,
I think, Madam Chair, this is Leslie Johnstone. The board was, when it was initiated, was trying to be as transparent as possible with itself and with the stakeholders, and was trying to make sure that there was every opportunity for the board to be evaluated, because it had been reconfigured pretty substantially right before this happened. And so at some point, something similar seems appropriate for ours, because it is a new entity. But it might not be something that we can have a structure on, but rather kind of an open retreat discussion and with public input might be an approach. It was just the formalization of it was difficult in the other setting.
Okay.
This is Ron Klein. And I don't have to fully form this thought yet, but is there some way to do a 360 review of the board, sort of what Leslie was saying in the sense of a public comment, that to go around, and I don't know how you do this in a public or a private way, to look at the various entities we deal with within the state government or federal government or GovChaw, or various different entities we deal with, to ask how they think we're doing. Is that a more useful assessment than the board grading itself?
You know, Dr. Klein, I think you probably run into the same issue that Ms. Johnstone was talking about. Anything that if you reached out to, say, Commissioner Kipper and asked you to rate something, he probably would want to make constructive suggestions one-on-one to board members rather than having something be a public document. I mean, that seems to be the issue that...
Right.
This is Leslie Johnstone.
Yes.
We could suggest that the chair have one-on-one discussions with some of the major stakeholders and incorporate that into how the board is managed.
I think I turned red.
And again, the board doesn't have to do this. Or you could go off and think about it, and we could bring it back at the next meeting. If you have, if you have particular suggestions for any kind of written brainstorming that you'd like us to put in a report, we could do that for you as well. But I'm not sure exactly. I mean, I guess I could bring back the paragraph or two from the PEB board duties, policies, and procedures that show what they do. Would you like me to bring it back next time?
You know, I don't think that the board is in a position of making a decision on this today for a motion is what I'm hearing. But I think it's good for us to have a discussion that, you know, the assessment, we all need to be valuing our time and commitment to the agency. So, and you know, I've talked with other board members, just as other board members have talked to me on how we can improve process and do that. So that's taking place all the time. So, all right, next agenda item. We're at agenda item number 12, reports from the advisory committee.
So we have an update on recommendation number 10 from the Plan Certification Committee. That recommendation was that the service areas match the rating areas that are established by the Division of Insurance and approved by CMS. The rating areas have run into a snag with CMS. We recommended that the Clark County rating area include Pahrump, which is just outside of Clark County. CMS has indicated that is not a possible option, and so the Division of Insurance is working with CMS to come up with new rating areas that will work for Nevada. And that's pretty much as far as we can go right now without having CMS approval for one direction or another. It is still appropriate, we think, that the service areas match rating areas. If they were to be different than the rating area, then you would get adverse selection where you have one carrier operating in the full area and one only operating in part of an area. So we do think it's appropriate that the service areas match the rating areas, but we still have to see what those rating areas are. So we will provide to the board an update to this one again once we have the final approval from CMS from the Division of Insurance.
And maybe Commissioner Kipper might give us an update from...
Sure. For the record, Scott Kipper, one of the things we've run into is the fact that the entire county essentially has to be included in the service area. So our ability to put Pahrump into Clark County was basically trumped. So we're looking, and the number of rating areas is limited to the number of MSAs or metropolitan statistical areas in the state plus one. So we have, we're limited to 4 rating areas. So we're trying to figure out what the best way to divide this state into a fair and equitable set of rating areas and still provide the best possible consumer services.
A work in progress, in other words, again.
Still.
Could I ask a quick, Ron Klein, can I ask a quick question of either John or Commissioner Kipper, which is, what was the CMS logic for not including Pahrump and Clark County, which those of us who live down here seems it's a pretty natural fit?
Well, in that, for the record, Scott Kipper and Dr. Klein, that's a great question. I think trying to bring logic into some of the work that the federal government is doing is either a challenge or a foolhardy, but it has to. We could have done a 3-digit zip code and include Pahrump, but that would also basically include the rest of that county in which Pahrump is located. So we're evaluating, the options here, none of which are ideal, but I think we're pretty close to a solution and a recommendation.
Any other questions? Okay, so that's the update on the rating and service areas. Plan Certification Committee has a recommendation that it's bringing forward to the full board today. And that's to approve the certification standards for standalone pediatric, dental, adult dental, and adult vision plans. Not to require any type of accreditation for plan year 2014 for dental or vision plans, as this information is not readily accessible, and require all qualified health plans that will provide pediatric, dental, and vision essential health benefits to separate their pricing out from the remainder of their health plans by utilizing a rider for those products. So, and Dr. Klein co-chairs that committee with me, and Dr. Klein, I don't know if you have any other comments on that recommendation.
Yeah, perhaps I remember incorrectly. My recollection was that the dental plans were going to be standalone riders. The vision had to be incorporated into the plan. Is that not what we decided? That's my recollection.
For the record, John Hager, you are correct. It's the pediatric dental and adult dental that would be a rider, and pediatric vision essential health benefits are required to be offered in that qualified health plan itself. So it would be adult vision that could be offered as a rider.
Then I guess just for the purposes of the board, I would just, we plan certification and management went around on dental riders versus incorporating them for 45 minutes or so. So to save everybody, and we wound up in the exact same place we started. So to make it cut to the chase, I think the idea of having a standalone dental was it was more transparent in terms of deductibles and what was covered and the actual additional cost of the dental plan. By separating it out, made it easier for people to judge apples and apples, medical to medical that didn't include dental. And if you included dental, people would have a harder time figuring it out. And then my major concern, and I'll address this later when it comes to vision, is that by having a dental plan as part of the medical plan, that the deductibles for the dental were going to be incorporated into the medical. So you have a $3,000 deductible for medical and dental combined, and then you don't have any serious medical problems. You'll never get any dental benefit, presumably because you'll never hit the $3,000 cap, the $3,000 deductible, so you never get no benefit in terms of cavities or anything like that. So that was the reason we wanted to split out dental from medical. So I would be supportive of that. Was in the whole committee, I believe we unanimously agreed on that to split out dental as a separate project.
For the record, John Hager, and just one point to clarify, the report was certainly written that way about the deductible, and there was a long discussion about that. We have found out that I think it was discussed briefly at that meeting that even if they're embedded, the dental plans, dental options could have a separate deductible. They could have a separate lower deductible, so you could receive some benefit from that. But to Dr. Klein's point about being able to compare one plan to another, it was if there were some plans that offered dental embedded and some plans that didn't, it would be very difficult to compare apples to apples with the pricing and everything to make sure that you understood what you're comparing. So by separating it out as a rider, we're allowing apples to apples comparison of qualified health plans, and then once you select that, you move on to comparing the dental plans that are available.
All right, any other further discussion, or Dr. Klein, any further clarification?
No, are you ready for a motion, Madam Chair?
I sure am.
I would move that we adopt the principle of having dental plans as standalone standalone riders within the health insurance exchange. I'm saying that correctly, John. Feel free to correct me.
No, vision, we didn't do vision.
That health, NHL.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Marie Kerr, second.
All right, we have a motion and second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And Madam Chair, who was the second? Was it Ms. Lewis or Ms. Kerr?
They both did it at the same time, so I'll
We could throw the dice for it.
you can throw
Oh, she said you can have it.
Okay.
All right, Klein Kerr.
All right.
Thank
We
you.
had a second and a third.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Damon Haycock for the record, there was two other recommendations, one for postponing accreditation or not requiring any type of accreditation for plan year 2014 for those standalone dental and vision plans, and improving the certification standards that were for all of those standalone products
Okay.
as well. I don't want you to pass over that.
Thank you, Mr.
I
Haycock.
just want to make sure that I want to make sure we're going to talk about vision separately. My only point is that I want to make sure we're going to talk about vision separately. That I have concerns about vision that I want to speak to. So as long as it's concerning dental, I'm comfortable.
Okay, but Dr. Klein, are you comfortable with approving the certification standards for standalone pediatric dental, adult dental, and adult vision plans?
Adult vision, yes, but that's separate from that. That doesn't have to be part of the QHP. Yes, I'm okay with that.
Okay, do you want to make a motion to approve that part of the?
I move what you said.
Okay.
So
Do we have a second to that?
Ms. Lester Johnson, I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And then there was one last recommendation that we haven't moved on, and that is not to require any type of accreditation for the plan year 2014 for dental or vision plans, as this information is not readily accessible.
I would so move.
Is there a second?
This is Dr. Ford, I second.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And then Dr. Klein, I think you had something that you wanted to discuss that falls under plan certification and management.
I think to the embedded pediatric vision plans, and just to clarify for everybody because it's confusing, the pediatric vision plans have to be embedded within the QHPs, whereas the adult vision plans don't have to be. So that's why we previously voted on having the adult vision plans as part of separate riders, but not the pediatric vision. The pediatric vision has to be incorporated in the QHP by virtue of the requirements for the ACA. My concern with the embedded vision plans is exactly what it was with the embedded dental plans. That if we have a major medical plan with a $3,000 deductible, just picking that number, then you will never gain any of your vision, benefits unless you really have very, very serious problems. Whereas currently, if I understand it, vision plans, they cover eye exams, they cover one pair of glasses a year, they cover all of those things. So we went around and around on this, and the Division of Insurance representative, and maybe Commissioner Kipper can speak to this, said that if you had a QHP that did not have separate standards, I guess, provision, as opposed to major medical, then that would be considered discriminatory and wouldn't be approved. And so that was sort of what the whole embedded vision plan relies on, is basically the Division of Insurance not approving any QHP that would incorporate the deductible for major medical into the deductible division, as opposed to having a separate benefit that would say you get a pair of glasses once a year or a vision exam once a year. So that's, I feel uncomfortable with that because I'm concerned that we're going to lose vision care for kids, which is the whole point of the ACA. So that was my major concern with embedding it, but it seems like we have to. So Commissioner Kipper can speak to that, or.
Yeah, for the record, Scott Kipper. We've had this discussion internally. I certainly am not the expert on this, but I believe Dr. Klein laid it out pretty clearly, is that we run into a problem with discriminatory plan benefits that you cannot steer individuals away from one plan or another because of the level of discriminatory benefits. And so I think that's what we're running into here. And we've yet to come up with a really great solution to this.
You know, I was reassured after the Plan Certification and Management Committee that because this discriminatory clause, this didn't occur. And I had one of those parking lot conversations with an oral surgeon who I believe presented to folks up in Carson City recently, where he was having trouble getting paid because of the arguments between the dental plans and the medical plans and which was which and who had to pay. So I sort of came away from that feeling a little more concerned. I think you're right. We don't have a great solution to this. I wonder if it would be reasonable for us as a board to say that a separate set of deductibles has to be, part of a for vision, for pediatric vision, has to be part of the QHP, and that would be a more micromanaged kind of approach. The more laissez-faire approach would be to simply say, we hope this doesn't happen, and we'll come back and look at it in a year and pass a motion that says we review these plans for pediatric vision benefits in a year and see what's actually happening in the marketplace.
Allow me to get with my staff to drill down into this a little bit more. I think the issue, not only on vision, but also the issue of the oral surgeon does merit some further discussion and research by our staff. I just would not want to provide the board information and direction to my staff to approve plans that would endanger our ability to verify that these plans are qualified health plans, and then have the feds come in and trump us later on. So let us do a little bit more additional work on this.
Okay.
So shall we table this last recommendation on vision plans, or?
Well,
we don't have.
For the record, John Hager, so I think that yes. We'll talk about it with the Division of Insurance. I think that we could proceed with the vision plans embedded in the health plans as it is, but we should get a better handle on this. So we'll talk with the commissioner and his staff, and we'll come back with a recommendation one way or the other.
Yeah, because I too am pretty concerned about, a vision deductible or a dental deductible being spoken in the same breath as major medical deductible. That's concerning.
So is there a administrative problem with a single QHP having different deductibles for different benefits? Is that an issue, or is that fairly simple to do?
For the record, Scott Kipper, Dr. Klein, let me double check without going on the record here to that level of detail and find out if that's going to be a concern or not. I just want to, because quite frankly, it's a level of detail that I'm not comfortable discussing.
I think, Dr. Klein, your questions have tweaked the curiosity of the commissioner. That's a fair question.
I think that's a fair assessment, yes.
I appreciate that adjective, thank you.
All right, I don't believe we have any recommendations from any of the other advisory committees. So we'll move on to item number 13, which are discussion and possible action for other dates, times, and agenda items.
So for the record, John Hager, so March 27th is our next meeting. It's the legislative update meeting at 4 p.m. via phone. On April 11th, we have our next regular board meeting scheduled for 11:30. That'll include a legislative update, review and approval of the Nevada Health Link logo and taglines, and then the quarterly financial consumer outreach and IT implementation reports. Hopefully, we will also have a network adequacy discussion at that point. And I can't remember anything else that is on the agenda for then. But I'm sure that something will come up.
All right, any other suggestions from board members to staff on other agenda items? I've watched John make notes all through the meeting on things that we wanted to follow up on, so I know those will be added. All right, then let's close agenda item 13, and Athena will go to public comment. Do you want to go live broadcast or whatever the appropriate term is for that?
All participants are now in interactive talk mode.
All right, thank you. Why don't we start with telephone first, and then I'll go to Las Vegas and here in Carson City. Is there anyone on the phone that would like to participate in public comment?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, could you identify yourself for the record, please?
Yes, sure. James Mullen with Delta Dental Insurance Company.
Yes.
I wanted to just comment briefly. I've appeared in front of the advisory committee and the board previously. At the last advisory committee meeting, I had cautioned the application of certification standards to the adult dental or supplemental offering as being an element that is not required to be applied.
Can you hear me right now?
Sounds like no one can hear me.
Oh, all right. Can you hear us now?
We can hear you, but we cannot hear the caller.
Mr. Mullen, can you go ahead and start over?
Okay, so James Mullen with Delta Dental Insurance Company. And I wanted to make a comment that there is no requirement to apply certification standards to supplemental benefits for adult dental. And I had raised that as a concern at the last advisory committee meeting. I do apologize, I did not know this was up for board approval today. But the application of some of those standards, some of them are perfectly logical, but some of the others were really always intended for the pediatric benefits. So it will have the effect of raising the cost of supplemental dental coverage. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. I'm not sure what can be done at this point, seeing that the motion has carried, but I can talk offline with Mr. Hager if necessary.
Yeah, Mr. Mullen, if you could please give me a call, we'll talk about this.
Okay. there anyone else on the phone line that would like to participate in public comment? Okay, how about in Clark County, down in Las Vegas?
Just a few tired survivors.
All right, thank you. How about here in Carson City? All right, looks like that we have no public comment here. So I want to thank everyone for their participation today, and as always, to the preparation done by staff and our board members. And we'll look forward to seeing or talking to everyone on the teleconference on March 27th for a legislative update at that point in time. So thank you, everyone, and almost good evening.
We're getting there.
I wasn't following.
Yeah.
I think he misunderstood.
No, because we talked about accreditation. We approved these certifications.
Some of it was logged.
Right.
And
We're now
he doesn't need credit, but he might have to go. I'll talk to him. Well, I'm gonna go through each of these items.
I'm well, how are you? I'm fine.
Here.
Nice to see you.
Oh, I got
Like a lot here, you're all
Figure something
wrapped
out.
up. All right. It was so funny, there was everybody just.
Oh, good. All right, good.
Yeah.
We had a video discussion, right?
Yeah,
And then we
right.
had a little call, and we had a video.
And then you guys get more mature.
Yeah,
exactly.
And
as you guys get more mature, they can make those.
Yeah. All people will have this conversation.
What? All right. We have a few plans to stay. So as you mature, because then you're gonna be a governing board.
Okay, yeah.
Right. I always look at it like it was cancer. Right. It's different, right. Good to see you. Thanks for all your hard work.
Okay.
Just keep our eye out on it. Yeah, right.
You're not blasting the people out right here. And when you do the microphones, it's a little bit different and how our audio is going to be controlled. It's good. Let's.
Not too bad for the first time. I thought you
This
did
one really cool. If you don't, we'll figure
I
it
would
out
have
in
been
Vegas, won't we?
listening right there. Are you staying here?
I
Yeah,
got the guy
okay.
coming
I'm
in.
just doing my
He's gonna
first
introduce
live.
me.
Okay.
There's a company out of Vegas that has both a Reno office and a Vegas office. I spoke today about